Hey everyone, thanks for joining Just Us Chatting. I'm Tamara.
And my name's Michael, and you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook at Just Us Chatting. Today we wanted to talk a little bit about a website called Change the Terms that was brought to our attention by Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin in their video January 1st about how they're leaving Patreon. So he only briefly mentioned it, so we decided we would look into it. And we're going to look at their FAQs a little bit and just kind of talk through some of this. So let me share this with you. As you can see, well, maybe you can, yeah, you probably can. The FAQs page, it says 40 civil and human rights organizations have come together to tell internet companies it's time to change the terms. This is a large organized effort. This is, not just these are professional internet trolls in a way. These are professional, Southern Poverty Law Center and a bunch of other groups come together to suggest terms of service to prevent certain kinds of speech online. And they state very clearly that they know that the reason they're going after the companies, the financial institutions, the hosting companies and all of that, is because they know that it's actually illegal under the First Amendment,
right,
to create any kind of, so they can't do it that way. They know they can't do it that way. That's too, they're basically trying to go around the spirit of the law. Mm-hmm. The spirit of the law is free speech is important, mm-hmm. and it's a principle. And we're going to have to talk a little bit about why we need to ensure that monetary transactions are treated as a public right. If you are a company that... Morphe, come here.
It's okay. Oh, it's a bubble. Hi. Yeah, it's okay if there's people outside. Mm-hmm. It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's all right.
So, if there's people who are... No!
Shh, shh, shh.
Stop it.
It's okay.
Stop it. Yeah, well... Yeah. If there's corporations and companies that have the control over who can process transactions, you need to be able to protect that as a public right for everyone. If you have to bake the cake, okay, you definitely have to process the transactions. Like, there's no, you know what I mean?
You can't discriminate.
You can't discriminate. And then, so we also need to make a distinction between, the other really important thing is that the left has co-opted the phrase hate, or the term hate, as if that's something that only exists on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and it's dangerous that we're allowing people to fill all sorts of political ideas, or cover all sorts of political ideas with the word hate. Mm-hmm. We're just going to create this basket called hate group or hate speech or hate whatever. Mm-hmm. Just hate things.
Hateful activities.
Hateful activities, which is they're starting to call this, right? Hateful activities? I mean, really? Hateful activities? That's such a, that's such a... The problem with the term in the first place is that it's ridiculously subjective. Mm-hmm. So as time goes on, people will continue to put more and more things in that basket.
Exactly.
Right? It's just an open invitation to destroy, right? our system of governance and the freedom of speech and our freedoms in this country. It's absolutely abhorrent. We cannot allow this to go.
No kidding.
To go forward. So
like my mind immediately goes to like biologists, like people speaking scientifically about, you know, trans people.
Biology,
and, and like that's going to be
gender.
considered hate speech.
Right.
Is if you say that, you know, this is not a thing, or, you know, this is how it is. There's differences between genders.
Yeah. So so let's go ahead and like their self-professed goals here. Just as the internet has created immense positive value by connecting people and creating new communities, it has also given new tools to those who want to hatefully threaten, harass, intimidate, defame, or even violently attack people different from themselves. Okay. Nobody likes violent attacks. Nobody likes defamation or intimidation, harassment. Nobody's defending threatening people. The weird thing here is that they say hatefully threaten. Right? Like that's a qualifier somehow. What do you mean by hatefully threaten? Like, is there some other kind of threat than a hateful threat? Is there some other kind of attack than a hateful attack? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Right? We got to qualify it and you know, filter it through this lens of hateful rhetoric. Right? How come we've got it? This use of language is it's really deceitful and it's a problem. White supremacists and other organizations engaged in these sorts of hateful activities use social media and other major tech platforms to mobilize, organize, fundraise, and normalize racism, sexism, bigotry, and xenophobia. Now, that sounds perfectly reasonable. Like, who's got a problem with that? Except that what people are calling xenophobia, right? Like, if you want border security, you're called a xenophobe. That's unreasonable, right? That's an unreasonable correlation. If you're saying, look, I want to make sure we know who's coming into the country, right? We don't want to just let everyone in. We want to open borders. We want
to limit the amount of people.
Yeah, we want to limit the amount of people that are coming into our country. We want to, you know, vet the people that are coming in and make sure that we're not like just letting random gang members and terrorists and whatever.
Criminals.
Like we're not looking for criminals, right? So if we're not allowed to repel borders when it comes to criminals and terrorists, right? And we're concerned that might be a problem, right?
Right.
Then all of a sudden, you're a xenophobe and a racist.
Yeah.
Right? This is not acceptable, right? And this is why that's not acceptable, because they call people xenophobes and racists and bigots who are just reasonable, concerned citizens. Like, I'm concerned that, you know, perhaps borders are important. Right? That we shouldn't eliminate immigration services. Like, you know, enforcement. Like, no, we shouldn't eliminate the agencies that are trying to remove illegal people from the country. Right? Like, if that is the same thing as racism, we're completely off the rails. And because we all know that is the same thing as racism in the current climate, or at least in the current online climate, you know, in the Twitter sphere, in the blogosphere, and in these elite, you know, liberal media establishments, because that's equivalent to racism. This particular policy, you know, objectives are a problem.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't an attempt to get rid of sexism, bigotry, and xenophobia or racism. It's an attempt to shut people up who disagree with their political policies. Like, okay, some people, I don't think a border wall is like, you know, like woohoo, like there's tunnels and ladders and all sorts of other ways to get in the country.
Yeah.
So I'm not like, oh, we need a wall, build that wall. I'm not that guy, okay?
Yeah.
I don't think that. But I don't think that people who have that, who are, you know, swayed by that simplistic of a solution, are necessarily
Bad people.
racist.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think those people are. It's not the same thing as, you know, racism. To say that, well, there's a lot of crime in Honduras. It's, you know, basically the murder capital of the world. In, you know, in peace, you know, in the, without there actually being a civil war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's violent. So do we want a lot of people coming from there? Well, I mean, they may be fleeing from that, but they may also be bad people.
Right.
We don't know. It's not like we're just like, oh yeah.
It's probably a mix.
Right?
is
Because
the
like
thing.
here's the thing. If you're living in a place like that, yes, you probably want to get out of there, you know, because there's violence. But if you're a person who's willing to break the law to get, you know, your own financial gain and, you know, status and whatever else, why the hell not go to America? There's more money here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're a gangbanger in Venezuela, or, you know, in Honduras, why not come to America? It seems like a, you know, hey, the land of opportunity.
There's more wealthy people to exploit.
Yeah,
You
there's
know?
much more wealth here. So if you're a person who's willing to use violence to, you know, make your own life more comfortable for, you know, whatever reason, why wouldn't you go to America? There's no reason that, like, only the, you know, there's no reason that only the good people who are fleeing violence are, you know, going to come to America, right? The bad people who want to commit violence are going to come here too.
Yeah.
It's just the case.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of incentive for people to come to America,
Yeah.
right? So we need to be able to sort out who's who at the border.
And we need to be able to talk about these ideas without just being called a racist just because you're like
Right.
questioning whether or not it's a good idea to let these people in.
Right.
Just the idea of being able to talk about these things, that all of a sudden you're racist just because you want to question it.
Right.
You know, you're not automatically saying, yes, let
The
them
other
all
thing is,
come in.
okay, here's the other thing. I'm not very well informed about, you know, what the current immigration policies are even, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not, the other problem is that you can mix up, like, ignorance about immigration policy with bigotry and hatred towards a race. And that's stupid too. That's a stupid stupid way to screw up our cultural fabric, right? Because it's like, a lot of people aren't that concerned, or aren't concerned enough, or haven't been through the immigration system, so they're not really that well informed about what the current immigration policies are.
Yeah.
Okay? But when you get people on the news saying, you know, oh look, you know, Trump's a racist because he doesn't want to let 6,000 people into the country.
Right.
That doesn't make people racist.
Right.
Right? If someone's like, no, I don't think we should let 6,000 people into the country just because they show up.
Yeah.
Right? And just go ahead, let them all in. That doesn't make you a racist if you
No.
think that's a bad idea. It's just not the case. It'd be the same thing if they were coming from Canada. You know, there's 6,000 Canadians, you know, storming the North Dakota border.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like throwing rocks at border patrol agents and stuff like this. It's like, no, keep those people out.
Yeah.
You know, like, no.
You know, maybe let a few in here or there,
Figure out
but
who those people are, because why the hell are they leaving Canada? Right. First
they
of all,
need to
but,
go
like,
through the process.
There's, you know, like,
There's a process in place for a reason.
there's a process in place for a reason, and, you know, there's some argument about, you know, part of the process, I think, is that, well, you know, I'm learning more about this as time goes on, but, like, if you have a sponsor, you're supposed to be able to, you know, allow those people into the country once they've got a legal sponsor and someone in the country who's willing to take care of them. They should be released to those people in the country instead of being kicked, you know, held back out. And Trump's basically said, no, nobody's coming in until we get this sorted out. So
Didn't
he's
he
holding
let-
people and holding, like,
Early on, though, didn't he let in like 100 people right off the bat? I thought he let in a small group of people. Well, small compared to the
yeah.
size of the...
yeah, I'm
whole
not
caravan.
sure. I'm really not sure, but, like, you know, and that's the thing, is the particulars of it, of the actual situation, aren't as important to me as the fact that, like, anyone who has a question, like, is you know, anyone who's talking about border security is immediately called a racist, right?
Right.
So if if we can't even ask questions about it, we're
Right.
never going to learn, right? If we can't even talk about it, we're never going to, we're never going to solve any issues, right? And that's the real problem with this, is that they don't want to cooperate to solve issues. They don't want to compromise to solve issues. They just want people to shut up and bow.
And do as you're told.
Do as you're told. Just shut up, and give us control of the government, and give us control of the culture, and give us
Yeah.
control of, and it's...
So that's why this is a problem, because
Yeah.
the way they're defining words
Right.
is different
Like,
than
Nobody
the original
likes
definition.
Nobody likes racism, sexism, bigotry, and xenophobia. Okay, but I'd be willing to make a case that all of that is totally rampant on the left. Like, and it's literally, it's like codified, and it's deeply theoretical, and it's entrenched. You know what I mean? And they're they've got their sophisticated, subtle points about how the interplay of privilege and power and stuff like this, but cultural group dynamics between black and white and people of color and white supremacy. I'll say white supremacy. Okay, we've got a culture that's based in that was built by white people for white people. Expressly against black people. So.
I mean, it's changed a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for
it's
sure.
like-
But like that's not to say that there aren't kind of echoes of that.
Sure.
And that isn't that there aren't still lingering cultural norms and that are I don't want to use the word harmful that are holding people back.
Yeah.
Unfairly.
Yeah, especially in certain parts of the country.
Yeah. So that's true, right?
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not rampant, though.
It's not rampant, and it's also.
It's not really acceptable in this country.
It's not
either.
acceptable, and it's not worth sacrificing the more fundamental principle of equality under the law.
Yeah.
Right. And I know they go into the fact that they know, like I said, they know they can't do this legally, so they're trying to do it through public pressure.
Yeah.
That's a problem, though, and we need to have a legal framework in place that prevents that prevents this kind of discrimination, especially along ideological lines like this. You can't do it.
I mean, who's the one that gets to decide?
Yeah,
what
exactly.
is harassment? What is?
And this is what's hilarious about this whole thing. Well, yes, this is what's hilarious about this whole thing is that these people are, generally anti-corporate types, right? And they're like, okay, well, we're just gonna use these corporations instead.
Yeah, to police people.
Yeah, we want
to shut people down if we
Right.
don't like what you have to say.
Right. They're trying to, they're it's. It's a corporate. There's like this weird marriage between the left and the corporate world. Like it's in the media. You've got all the late night talk show hosts are basically like it's just a propaganda wing of the it's just they're all saying the same thing. It's propaganda, right? They've got the same. They basically have the same jokes,
Narrative and
right? The same narrative, and all of them are rolling out the party line. But I mean those are huge corporations.
yeah.
Like
That
those
are funding
are
those, yeah.
Yeah, it's like how are like these people are like the anti-establishment revolutionaries? Really? Right? And then you've got, they're just carrying water for like neo-Marxists. They're ridiculous. And then you've got now it's like, okay, well, let's go to corporations. And the problem is these, I would say that most of these corporations are generally well-meaning, right? They're very, smart and articulate in their own particular industry. You know, you've got CEOs who are, well, maybe overpaid or whatever, but like, you've got business people that are entirely focused on their business, and then you get people like, you know, coming and saying, your platform is, you know, your business is being used behind your back unwittingly that you don't know about, you know, to support white supremacy and racism and bigotry and violence. And you're like, oh God, well that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Let's fix that. You know what I mean? So then it's like, well, first we need to people to know that that's not true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, to the extent that it is true, where you've got people who have actually committed violence or are planning violence, and you can say, no, look, they're building bombs or something. You know, they're building, you know, they're committing illegal activities.
Yeah.
Right? And they're actually planning, you know, violence or something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, shut them down.
Yeah.
Don't process those payments.
Sure.
Fine.
Sure.
Right? But we don't. But that's based on criminal activity.
Right.
What they're trying to do is criminalize speech. They're trying to get companies to to de facto criminalize certain kinds of speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think that that's really dangerous.
Yeah. I agree.
So, okay, and then they go, the alt-right emerged from the shadows at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. We saw a prime example of how the internet's invigoration of hate groups can result in real-world violence. Well, yes, that's true. You know, the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville.
But that was like a small portion of that. I'm sure most of those people were not like wanting to be violent.
I don't
What do
know.
you think?
There were definitely some nasty people there.
Yeah.
You know, there were definitely some people like, and there were definitely racists, and there were definitely, you know, white nationalists and white supremacists, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea that was supposed to unite the right was in some way true, because basically everyone on the right went, yeah, screw those people. Like, so
they united against these far right white supremacists. Yep. And this is what I hate, though, is that they're calling the alt-right, they're including people who are completely anti-racism, anti-authoritarian, you know, like, there are good people that we listen to that they're calling alt-right, that are nowhere near the alt-right. They may be sort of going towards the right more than, you know, liberal, you know, like they used to be. But
here's the thing is, again, it's another one of these weird language inversions, right?
Yeah.
So the alt-right, you know, was... I think the term was actually coined by Richard Spencer.
Oh, really?
Maybe Steve Bannon, but I'm not sure. But it was kind of... well, okay, so in the run-up to the 2016 election, there was this whole, like, kind of, you know, fractionating war on the right, you know, culture war on the right. And it was basically against, you know, between old school conservatives and kind of libertarians. And so the libertarians are actually further left than the old school conservatives.
Yeah.
But then, you know, as that was happening, there was also a war going on between old school conservatives and like ethno-nationalists. And the problem is that on the left, they think old school conservatives are ethno-nationalists.
Right, exactly.
Right? That's not the case.
Yeah.
Old school conservatives are basically like Christians, fundamentalists, this kind of stuff. But if you go into, you know, these you go into these Protestant megachurches, it's very, you know, it's very multicultural. Although multicultural it's multiracial, but it's all Christians, so they're all the same culture. You know what I mean? It's not multicultural in that way. Right. And that's one of the things. Like, multiculturalism does not mean different skin colors.
Yeah.
You know, it means different ideas. But
right. Yeah.
Means different, you know, shared sense of meaning. But the old school conservatives were not ethnocentric like that. Mm-hmm. Not in the way that the left tends to think of them as ethnocentric.
Yeah.
Right? They were inclusive as long as you believe in the one true God, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, we're all Christians here. It's great. Mm-hmm. Right? And they wanted a Christian nation and all that. Right? Yeah. I'm not advocating for that. What I'm saying is that the new right, the emerging right, is actually libertarian. Mm-hmm. It's old school liberal. Mm-hmm. It's further left than the traditional conservatives.
Do you think it's a lot of younger people too, like ourselves, that are more libertarian?
Yeah, and apparently Gen Z is more conservative than any of the previous generations. And the reason is that we're actually making progress as a nation, and we're trying now. The conservatives, right? The majority of people who are temperamentally conservative, which means not any particular set of policies that they adhere to, but that they want to maintain a funcking world. Right? They want to maintain something that's working. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
That's the classical, like conservative temperament.
Yeah.
Like, don't break it. It's already working. Leave it alone.
Right. Like upholding the Constitution.
Right. Right. So the new conservatives, right, are trying to conserve our new, status quo, which is, post-civil rights, right? It's post- gay rights, it's like it's the old liberalism. It's like we want a world where everyone's equal, before the law, and we want to let that be like that, right? The new left, the new progressives want to modify the law and modify the world to advantage minorities, right? And they think of it as level. Which is, like, that's not equal. Leveling. They want to level the playing field because these people are historically marginalized and disadvantaged. So we're going to, since it's slanted like this, we're going to pick them up like that. We're going to
equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity.
Yes, right. They want to do everything in their power to create. Well, they see it as creating. Here's the thing, though. Like, they see it as creating equality of opportunity to give. They don't believe that what a person living on the south side of Chicago experiences growing up is equal to what someone living in the suburbs of Chicago experiences growing up. And so they say those people don't have equal opportunities. It's like, okay, fair enough, right? But according to the law, they're equal.
Yeah.
They have equal opportunities under the law. And we don't I think we need to not mess with that.
Yeah.
If you want to create laws where certain people are advantaged over others, we've got problems, right?
Well, then you disadvantage others.
We can make cultural adjustments and try, so maybe that's what they're trying to do. We're going to make cultural adjustments. That's a dangerous cultural. It's dangerous to institutionalize prejudice, and that's what I think affirmative action is.
Yeah, that's what's happening. Like at Harvard right now, like. Plenty of Asians who would have normally gotten in are being disproportionately not let in because, hey, you're all too smart. So,
I'm not like super excited about the fact that, everyone's getting outperformed by Asian people. But if that's what it is, then, maybe we've got something to learn from them.
Right.
Like we should be assimilating some aspects of their culture so that we can perform as well as they do.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like we can go, wow, here they're coming from someplace else into our culture, right?
Yeah.
Built for us, right? Built by white people for white people, and they're doing better than we are.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well,
but they traditionally, they come from a traditionally hardworking environment, very ordered. Personal responsibility, hard work, learning, you know what I mean? Like, no wonder they're very intelligent.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's something genetically there as well, but I know it also comes from the hard work
for sure.
that they put in.
Nature and nurture.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're obviously kicking ass for some reason, right?
Yeah.
They're kicking ass so much that, top universities in the United States are saying, well, that's enough of those.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, that's racist.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's racist. You know what I mean? And I don't want to live in a world that's racist.
Yep.
I don't care who it favors.
Yeah.
You know? You know, and well, let me say that differently too, because I can hear the refrain. You know, you don't have a choice. You live in a world that's racist because racism is systemic, and you know, like, okay. I don't want to live in a world in which racism is legal.
Yeah.
Like, you should not be allowed to treat. The law should not look at someone differently because of the color of their skin. Period.
Right.
You know, and well, okay, so that's racism. They're not talking about. They're talking about ideology.
Yeah.
Right. They want to stop certain ideologies. Right. And look, I don't like white supremacists. I don't want white supremacists gathering and, you know, being, oh yeah, we're awesome. It's like, no, if you have to rely on the fact that you're white as, you know, the thing that's like awesome about you, then you're a loser.
Right.
Like, you didn't do anything to deserve that, and like, you know, this is the classic Doug Stanhope thing. It's like, if you're like, nationalism is like, you know, I'm proud because I was born on this piece of dirt. Like, this piece of dirt's better than that piece of dirt. You know, it's like, it's dumb. It's like, you didn't do anything about it. Like, you know.
You had no say in the matter.
Right? Or like the thing where it's like, you know, we defeated the Nazis. It's like, we didn't do shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, think you and me, you know, had a, you know, I remember we went to Taco Bell, you know, but I don't remember killing any Krauts. Like, you know, like, no, I don't remember doing that. That wasn't we.
Yeah.
That was, you know, that was our grandparents.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well,
some of them.
It's the same way people identify with their sports team, and they're like, we kicked, you know,
we kicked your ass, you know?
It's like, no, you weren't on the field.
Yeah, no, like, you didn't do any of that.
But, you know, we're getting...
Congratulations for being from the city that did that thing. No, but it's meaningful. Like, none of us... like, there's this, like, idea that we're somehow, like, we don't care about the fact that, you know, that white supremacists are, or that we're not just that we don't care, but that we're, you know, actively somehow supporting white supremacists, and like being like, oh yeah, you know, they should be, you know, we should, like, we're propping them up somehow. If you believe in free speech.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? If you believe that you know, that people should be allowed to share stupid ideas.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that people should be allowed to share stupid ideas.
Yeah. You don't have to listen to them.
I mean, like, I don't read comic books. You know what I mean? Like, I've never been interested in comic books. To me, it's like, okay, well, there's a bunch of, you know, like, imaginary people with, you know, superhuman powers, and you're telling these stories about them. It's like, okay, well, you know, I don't read comic books. It's a bunch of stupid ideas. I don't think it should be illegal.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think it should be illegal. Even though they're, you know, to me, they're stupid ideas.
Yeah.
Now, you could say, well, you know, it's not advocating to harm anyone. It's like, okay, well, if you're advocating to harm someone, all right, then yes.
Yeah.
You should be shunned. One. Two, if you're like, actually, this is wrong. If you're advocating to harm people, that's illegal.
Yeah.
You should be, you know, held accountable for that in the law.
In the court of law.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you're not advocating harm, right?
Yeah. Even if your ideas are controversial or hard to listen to, they're it's a little tricky, you know, it's a little like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the thing. We have to apply the law evenly. Right?
Yeah.
If we don't apply the law evenly, then you know, then Antifa can't talk either.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, because if they're trying, we're going to apply the law evenly. That's the real problem, and they don't seem to realize it. The law is going to be applied evenly. We're not gonna have, you know, a legal system that goes, oh well, you know, these people are, not minorities, so it doesn't apply to them. Like, I guarantee you the Asian kids are going to win the lawsuit at Harvard.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? They're going to win. Mm-hmm. Right? So what happens when these kinds of initiatives move forward is that they, it always backfires on the left, for one. Right? Like, all these... Who was it? Zoe Quinn is, arguing in front of the UN, for ways to censor the internet, right? And then, like, 2 years later, she was, crying about the fact that her videos were getting banned on YouTube. It's like, yeah. You should be allowed to speak. Mm-hmm. Crazy, right? Mm-hmm. What a crazy idea.
Well, they actually even talk about that in this article at some point. They do mention that they don't, that they need to be careful. They don't want to censor too much because they do feel like it's going to disproportionately affect minorities, which I don't really see how that's the case, but let's see what else they have to
Meanwhile, the internet has opened up unprecedented opportunities for diverse communities to speak, create, educate, entertain by building a direct connection with their audience and providing platforms for two voices that would otherwise be silenced. Yet these same creators,
including people of
color, women, religious minorities, and members of the LGBTQIA community.
What's the I and the A?
Intersex and I don't know.
Are routinely
harassed and threatened online. It's like, yeah. I mean, welcome to the internet.
Everyone's attacked online.
If you wanna say political things on the internet, people are gonna shit on you. Like that's just that. I don't understand where the this is this really old meme that there's no girls on the internet, right? It's like look, you're online, you're because in the early days of chat rooms, women would get in there and they'd be like, I can't believe you talk to a woman like that or whatever, these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Or you treat women so badly and stuff like that. It's like, you're not a woman, you're a box on a screen. Like, like I'm not treating a woman badly. Yeah. I'm typing things to my computer.
I would never say this to a woman in person.
It's like, you're okay, so online, you're basically acting in a disembodied way. Mm-hmm. You give up all of the kind of identity markers in a way, because it's like, well, if you're just text, in a
even
comment box,
if there's a little picture, it's like,
right? You're almost entirely your ideas and almost zero your identity. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
You don't get like physical protections like you would if you're a woman, right? So if you're a woman, the culture says, and you have to deal with a man in meat space in the physical world. Mm-hmm. Our culture necessarily says, she deserves a certain amount of deference and respect and distance, right? Like there's like this, you shouldn't be intimidating towards a woman. It's definitely uncouth.
Well, you also shouldn't be intimidating towards a man, although we tend to get more.
We're okay with that.
Yeah.
If men are, kind of like, whatever, and they're if men start saying stuff like, I'll whoop your fucking ass, like this, it's kind of like, oh God, here we go, blah, blah, and like, here's these two meatheads who are going to try and beat each other up, right? But if a man says that to a woman, I'll whoop your fucking ass, like, everyone's like, whoa, no you won't. Slow the fuck down there, buddy. Yeah. And that's important. We need, women need those that's a cultural protection for women. Good. It's a good thing. But if you're online, you don't need those same protections.
Not near you. They're like hundreds, thousands, whatever miles away from you.
And so, anyway, this is... Hi, Morphe. Oh. What's up?
You gonna get down?
Go on, Bubba. Look at all his hair.
I know.
My goodness. To vacuum the couch. But yeah, so... including people of color, women, religious minorities, members of the LGBTQIA community are routinely harassed and threatened online. These attacks stifle their voices and chill their participation on these platforms. Well, that's true, and it's true for people who aren't parts of those communities as well, this is the fact that you're a minority community and that you're is not a, I mean, it's not a reason to privilege your voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Protect it, fine. Privilege, no.
Yeah.
So, if you're trying to shutter ideology, and this is the thing, it's like they frame it as like we're trying to protect people of color, but I guarantee you, if it's a black conservative, talking about, if it's a black conservative talking about, the dangers of radical Islam or something like this, and saying we got to keep the Muslims out of the country, that person doesn't count as a person of color all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like, so this isn't about. That's another reason that this isn't about race. You know what I mean? It's not about protecting, people, minority voices. Like, it just isn't.
Yeah. It's
about ideological purity. So here we go. These harms, I ranted about harms yesterday. These harms interfere with the ability of entire communities to use the most important technological advance of the modern era. Yeah, well, you're literally trying to interfere with the ability of people of entire communities to use the most important technological advance of the modern era. Like, that's actually what you're trying to do. You want to stop people like Sargon of Akkad from talking? You're literally doing exactly that. You're trying to interfere with the ability of entire communities to use the most important technological advance of the modern era.
Yeah.
You just don't care about the people who are ideologically opposed to you. It has nothing to do with racism, sexism, any of that. It's about left-wing neo-Marxist ideology. That's what it is. It's about identity politics. You got the wrong color skin. You got the wrong color skin and the wrong ideas. You should shut up. It doesn't even have to be the wrong color skin. It's just, you just have the wrong ideas. We got to crush you. Some of the larger tech companies have made attempts, some more successfully than others, to address hateful activities on their services. Let me ask you something. What's a hateful activity on the internet?
Yeah.
What is it? Like, let's get right. Like, what? Like, if I say, a bad word to someone, I say,
Is that's right? Probably included.
Like, if I say, if I tell someone to fuck off.
Yeah, that's a hateful activity.
Right.
You should be banned.
Right. Maybe. What? I guess it depends on whether or not they're ideologically purer than me.
Yeah.
Right? If they're more woke than I am and I tell them to fuck off, then
yeah,
I probably need to get banned.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, what does hateful activity look like on the internet? You know what I mean? How do you classify that as activity?
Right.
Really?
Right.
You know what I mean? What is I mean, are words on a screen an activity? Speaking is kind of an activity. Typing is kind of an activity. But you're talking about tweets. It's like I sent a tweet. There's some words, on the screen.
Yeah.
Is that an activity?
Yeah.
How is that an activity?
Unless it's like the KKK or like, some white supremacist groups being like, we're going to get together and do this bad thing to these people over here. That's like, an activity.
Let's organize and and do some bad things. It's like, well, it's unfortunate that we live in a world where there are people who want to organize and do bad things. Okay, but we can't sacrifice the distinction between the action, right, and the organization. It's like, if we want to, like, okay, what if leftists want to get together as and discuss forming a union, right? You get someone who is ideologically opposed to unions in power, right? For example, maybe these, massive financial industry, players like MasterCard, maybe they're like, you know what? These lefties trying to get together to organize something, they're probably planning violence.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and ban all of those people.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
This is not a good idea. Like, across the board. It's not good for the right. It's not good for the left. It's not good for political discourse in this country. The only people that this is good for is violent authoritarians. Right? People who, like, will vindictively seek power. Right? Are the only, because they can use this as a tool.
Yeah.
Right? This is the only kind of people that's actually going to be good for.
And they can squash whoever they want and use their own definitions to say, like, oh yeah, this person was doing this.
Right. Right. Exactly. You know, this is the problem with these expansive laws. When you create, and especially like hateful activities. Oh God.
That's not subjective at all.
That's not. I mean, I wonder if we could create if we could possibly create a wider box to put things in. You know, a bigger container to hold the shit that we want to make illegal. There's like it's like if you're trying to do surgery and you're like, okay, well, we need to make an incision right here. Grab the dynamite. You know what I mean? This is just stupid.
Yeah.
Indeed, some attempts have been over-inclusive, silencing diverse voices, combating racism and discrimination. Oh, look at that. What they're actually saying there, just in case you're not capable of translating Orwellian speak, right? Some attempts have been over-inclusive, silencing diverse voices, combating racism and discrimination. That means that some platforms have actually, put some anti-racist policies in place and enforced them equally regardless of the race. That's what that means, right? That means that some platforms have said you can't disparage people based on their race on our platform, and then someone came along and said kill all white people, and they went goodbye.
That's racist, yeah.
And they said that's racist. These people are saying, no, you can't do that. You can't silence people who are saying things, that are bad about white people. You can't do that. It's like consistent application of these standards is not going to be allowed, right? And that's what they really are saying here. Over-inclusive, right? That's their new way of saying, applied fairly, applied evenly, the same to everyone, right? Most tech companies are committed to providing a safe and welcoming space for all users, even if they have so far failed to follow through on that commitment. Well, I don't know that that's true, right? I don't think that's true at all.
That they failed?
I don't think they failed to follow through on that commitment in the least.
Yeah.
I think what they failed to do is sanitize your, Facebook feed from opposing views. They've failed to sanitize, the internet from of views that you don't like. That's what they failed to do, and good for them. Thank you. Please don't succeed at that ever.
Yeah.
This idea that somehow the platform isn't safe. Right? This is another one of these slippery distinctions. It's like you're not in danger no matter what because you went on Twitter. Right? Twitter is never dangerous to you. Ever. You're never going to open up Twitter and go, oh, and die. You're never going to get killed from Twitter. Period. Twitter's not dangerous.
Yeah.
All right? We need to stop that kind of nonsense. These are distinctions that matter. All right? To say that a platform isn't safe is stupid. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's ever died from going on Facebook. It's less dangerous than marijuana, and marijuana should be legal. So let's stop this nonsense about how the platform's not safe. Okay?
Well, yeah, it goes along with that whole idea that words can somehow equal violence.
It's so Orwellian. It's like these distinctions really, really matter. We're talking about, the internet's not safe. It's like, I'm sorry, when's the last time somebody went online? I mean, the world isn't safe. This is true. You may walk outside and get hit by a bus. Somebody might attack you. Your words have consequences. If you're going online harassing people and saying all these horrible things to them, and then somebody comes after you in the real world because of it, you know, that happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. But let's stop pretending that the platforms aren't safe.
Right.
Right? Because Facebook is safe. No one's ever gotten punched because they're on Facebook. Like by Facebook. The platform is not unsafe.
Yeah.
All right? It's not like, oh, well, I was saying something on Facebook and,
someone punched me.
Yeah, I just got punched in the face because of the way that Facebook works. It's like, no, that's because of the way that people in the world work, right? And maybe you were expressing opinions on Facebook and somebody punched you in the face because of it. You know what I mean? Like, this is possible, but that's not Facebook's fault.
Yeah.
That's not Facebook's fault, right? They're not there to, like, make sure that you're, behaving yourself in a way that's not going to have repercussions in the real world.
Right. That's your own responsibility.
That's your responsibility. Like, seriously. And I'm not saying, like, that's also not an endorsement of, anyone who's committing violence because of stupid shit that someone said on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay, like that's reprehensible for sure. Like, I can't believe that even has to be said in the modern world, right? But, like, obviously, if somebody says something stupid on Facebook or Twitter, you should not hurt them.
Right.
Or threaten them. Like, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
That's basic human morality. But, like, we need to stop with this idea that Twitter's not a safe space or Facebook isn't a safe space. It's like nobody's ever been hurt, ever, by those platforms.
Maybe someone should create a platform that's just a safe space. That's all like puppies and kittens. And you're not allowed to post anything with words other than,
No, just bland. We just want just pictures of white bread. Just pictures of white bread or,
that's
oatmeal.
That's offensive to me, though.
Pictures of oatmeal. We want pictures of oatmeal without raisins. Nothing too spicy. Like, just nothing. We don't want any, just so... Oh, God. All we want is, pictures of rainbow-haired, pierced-faced, tattooed people eating oatmeal. That's it. Nothing else. That's all we want. That's all we want from the world. That's the platform. Oh. And not, like, I had pink hair, I'm not like, rainbow colored
before
hair,
it was trendy, me too.
Yeah, right? Back when, like, people actually, like, you couldn't get a job because of your hair color, Like,
yeah.
Now we're in, oh, yeah, look at you. You look young and fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look like you're ready to bring some fresh ideas to our corporation. We're really happy to have you.
Now, like, women in their 60s wear purple hair. I know. And rainbow-colored hair.
You look like just the right type of person for our progressive, corporation. It's like, not back in the day.
Yeah.
Not back in the day when I had pink hair. It was like, you need to leave.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even like, you need to go change that. We're not going to hire you. It's like, you show up for an interview like that, and they're like, you need to go. No. Bye.
I was able to get an interview at Walmart with pink hair, but I had to change
Walmart,
it. Right, at Walmart. But
and
I
then you had to change it to work at Walmart.
Yeah.
And that's the environment we grew up in, right?
Yeah.
Jeez. When tech companies try to regulate content arbitrarily without civil rights expertise, again, the ability to decide who's
allowed to be racist.
Yeah, who's allowed to be racist and who's not. This is bureaucratic hell planting, right? This is the seeding of bureaucratic hell. They're really, really trying. Like, we need civil rights expertise to determine who's allowed to talk. Tell me that's not just like the invitation to create this bureaucratic layer of indoctrinated, neo-Marxists. Mm-hmm. It's insane. The goal of these policies is to provide greater structure. There's your layer of bureaucracy, transparency, and accountability to the content moderation. Again, these are administrators, right? They want more admins. that many large platforms are already undertaking. The platforms want fair policies that are effectively enforced, right? We want to help them manage their platforms responsibly and respectively. Yeah, they want to help these companies manage their platforms. They're trying to tell you how to do your business. If you're out there in in the tech world, and you're trying this is dangerous. Who are you, and why should we listen to you? You shouldn't. You just shouldn't. The signatories and proponents of these model policies are a coalition of civil rights, human rights, technology policy, and consumer protection organizations. The policies themselves were drafted by the Center for American Progress, Color of Change, Free Press, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, the National Hispanic Media Coalition, and the Southern Poverty Law Center. So if the fact that the Southern Poverty Law Center is on there doesn't bother you, you're probably already ideologically possessed, or you just don't know, right? So maybe you just don't know. The Southern Poverty Law Center, right, recently had to settle with a former Muslim extremist, right, who is now trying to combat Muslim extremism, right?
Maajid, right?
Maajid Nawaz,
yeah,
right? They labeled him as an anti-Muslim extremist.
Yeah.
The man was
Islamophobic
certainly Islamophobic, but they put him down as a risk to hurt Islamic people, right? Like he's some sort of he's a white supremacist. The man used to be an Islamic extremist, and he's trying to de-radicalize Muslim extremists, and because of that, right?
They had him on a list.
They had him on a list that that had him targeted.
Yeah,
it's dangerous, right? They just settled a $3.4 million lawsuit, and they do they're absolutely absurd with who they include on these lists. Sam Harris was on this list.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I do remember that.
It's nuts. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is a joke. They're a rubber stamp for left-wing ideologues to call people racists. That's all it is. These drafters spent approximately 9 months consulting with a wide range of civil and human rights experts and technologists to try and develop a thorough yet flexible set of policies. Why are you doing this? Because they want to stop you from talking. For the past few years, because if you don't agree with them, you shouldn't be allowed to speak. For the past few years, civil and human rights organizations have seen hatred grow online and watched as major tech companies have repeatedly failed to adequately address the problems that their own platforms are creating. First of all, these platforms aren't creating these problems. All right? They're not. Like, the fact that there am racists in the world, there is them, right? Those things exist. Yeah. It's not created by these platforms.
Yeah.
All right? The fact that people are able to talk to each other more at greater distances with greater anonymity and and ease.
Yeah.
Right? That's true, but that's true for everyone. Right? So there's these massive coalitions of people who are not racist. Right? And then there's these little coalitions of people who are racist, right? Yeah. And it's a it's roughly the same as it's always been, except that now these people are connected. And you can have something like the Unite the Right rally where basically 1,000 people came from all over the country and even from Canada, right? You could only this is like the biggest white nationalist, ethnocentric, ethno-nationalist march, gathering.
And all they could gather was
since
the
60s, you know what I mean? Yeah. And all they could get was 1,000 people from all over the country.
North America.
Like, these people were like that. They're at that rate. There's probably maybe 10,000 legit. Maybe it can't. If that's all that shows up, you know what I mean? Like, what could the possible actual number be?
Per state or
or
total?
If that's what you get, and you've got people coming from as far away as Canada, and that's what you get 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this isn't a big group.
No, it's really not.
Right?
It's really not.
Anyway, so but okay, so they're allowed, so now these people can organize, right? It's like there's not very many of them, but they can talk to each other now. That's true, but so can everyone else. So it's not like, the technology is new, but it's not creating any kind of unique new problem that isn't. I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
These people could have been like on a mailing list in the past, and it's like, well, okay, the technology changes and everyone uses it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. But that doesn't mean that, that these platforms are creating hate.
Right. And I don't even think that those groups are necessarily calling for violence. I mean, I don't like their ideas. And, like listening to Richard Spencer that one time talk about like wanting to live in like a segregated world. I don't agree with that, but that's not advocating for violence, and it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. You know what I mean? Like these people's ideas, like not enough people want to see those ideas come to fruition.
I agree with that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now here's the problem I do have. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so with the Richard Spencer thing, right? Like, he's not advocating violence. Mm-hmm. But
I know enforcement of something like that.
Enforcement of something like that would be, violent.
It would have to be.
And it's the same problem I have with the radical left, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, we don't want to. These. Okay, so take Bill C-16 in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. They want to make these things happen by law, right? Like, legally you have to do this. It's like, well...
You have to use these words or you'll get fined.
Right. I really hope that somebody tries to force Peterson to say the words.
So you could see, so we can all see what goes down.
Well, because he said, I won't do it.
Yeah.
Right? I won't pay the fine.
Right.
If you put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. It's like, all of a sudden we'll have an example of what the government is. Mm-hmm. Right? The government is that which commits violence on behest, or at the behest of the majority, right?
Yeah. God, no, I hope that doesn't happen for him.
So, I hope for him that it doesn't happen too, but I think that he's the type of person who would follow through with that. You know what I mean? I think that he has the...
He's very principled and... Yeah.
So, I don't want to see that happen to anyone, but... The fact that it's law is actually a problem, And,
I mean, you've talked about this many times with the force of the law. Like, if you don't follow the law, this will happen, and then if you don't do that, then violence. Right. You know what I mean? It's state-sanctioned violence.
Right. Right. The state is literally the monopoly on violence.
Every new law that is created has the potential for violence against the individual.
Yes.
So that's why we are against creating lots of new laws.
Yeah, especially like this kind of social micromanagement. It's like a new Victorianism, it's like
Puritanism, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, at least this won't have the force of the law behind it, but still it's like I want to be able to use these platforms with some freedom. It's not like I go about, being hateful, but probably some of the things we say would be considered hateful.
We're probably already considered hateful. It's one of those things like when I was against the war in Iraq and and then I was against the Patriot Act and all this kind of stuff. It's like, look, if there's this meme going around that if you're not on a government watch list, you should be ashamed of yourself, right? It's like at this point in time, if these ridiculous leftist idiots don't consider you a hateful bigot, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, that's about where we're at now, because it's like, people like Greg Lukianoff and Peter Boghossian, Peter Boghossian being called, hateful, and like,
I'm not sure who
Brett Weinstein being called hateful, you know what I mean? Or Dave Rubin being called hateful.
They're super chill, they're really actually quite compassionate people. Yeah. Like,
we can't live in a society where those kinds of accusations are allowed to stand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's wrong.
Yeah.
And I do. I feel the same way. It's like, first of all, I still believe that if you're not, like, given the the state, the state of our laws, like regarding the Patriot Act, the National Defense Authorization Act, all the stuff that Snowden exposed, the idea that the government's allowed to spy on you and all that. It's like you should be on some sort of government watch list, because if you're not,
I'm sure we were like years ago.
I'm sure we've been sitting on a list for years, because we were very vocal about all of that, and it's just kind of gone away. Like nobody talks about it anymore. But it doesn't mean we're not on a list as staunch individualists, and liberty-minded people.
Yeah.
So, and if that were to come to light, I'd be like, good. I'm proud of that, because you should be principled enough to stand up for your, for your rights as an individual. And like, now I feel the same way. It's like before it was me against the right and this kind of like authoritarian military intelligence complex.
Yeah.
It's like, well, screw you people. That's totally against the sovereignty of the individual. And now it's in the modern world, the biggest push for the destruction of the sovereignty of the individual is the left.
Yeah, the far left, but maybe even not that far. I don't know.
Well, I mean, a lot of moderate leftists are carrying water for them. Like the kind of the general unwillingness to like denounce Antifa. It's like, these people are showing up in all black and hitting people with bike locks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, no.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that, anyone who's going out there in a MAGA hat, hitting people with sticks is an asshole. Right? I'm happy to say that those people are stupid and violent and they need to be, put in jail and prosecuted.
Yeah.
Please, let's have the same kind of denunciation from the left,
right.
Regarding Antifa. I'm not one of those people there's this guy that was this meme that was going around for a while, based stick man. It was from one of the early Portland riots between Trump supporters and Antifa was this, there's this guy who was went with like a little American flag, but he had like a thick like pole, and he was whacking people with it. You know what I mean? There were like fights breaking out everywhere, but he was hitting people with a stick. You know what I mean? And like, there's this meme going around calling him based stick man. Like he's awesome. Like, look at this guy because he's beating up these Antifa people. It's like, no, fuck that guy.
Yeah, he was beating up Antifa. Okay,
but still, screw that guy. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't want like I'm not happy about people who use violence to settle political disagreements.
No kidding. And it's crazy, like, sometimes these people are using violence to silence speakers. Just like people that are going to speak words that they're calling harmful. They're saying their words equal violence, yet they're espousing these people use violence. They're actually using physical literal violence.
Yeah. They're using literal violence, and they're accusing people of, like, promulgating harms.
Right. And yet you're like, wait, this doesn't compute.
Yeah, it doesn't. Back to the... So why are they doing this? Well, until now, there have not been a set of uniform model policies that civil and human rights organizations could point to as best practices. So we hope that these new policies can set a benchmark to measure the progress of major tech companies. I don't think that major tech companies should be making political progress. Like, I think that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Organizations could point to as we hope that these new policies can set a benchmark to measure the progress of major tech companies, as well as a guide for newer companies wrestling with some of these issues for the first time. Yeah, like this is cultural capture, right? They're trying to capture the political. They're trying to capture the technology that we use as a culture to discuss where we want to go as a culture. So that we can't discuss where we want to go as a culture. We can't have an exchange of ideas and talk about things. They want to bring back this kind of monolithic narrative, right? Which is so weird because the left is so like they're against monolithic narratives. They're against meta narratives. The postmodernists are against meta narratives, but the activists want to constrain everything to the postmodern narratives. right? The set of postmodern narratives around intersectionality and all this kind of stuff. So they were moving along just fine in that direction when it was just TV.
Yeah.
And that's why we've got the late night shows that all say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a monolithic narrative, right? Being pumped into everyone's houses. It's propaganda. Now they're trying to capture the internet to accomplish the same thing. They want to capture the internet so that they can control the Overton window so that we can't have real discussions. It's deeply authoritarian. With provisions calling for strong appeals process, we hope these policies will help companies more effectively combat hate on the platform while avoiding silencing the users and creators combating hate online. Right, so
some people
look at this use of hate, right? More effectively combat hate on the platform while avoiding silencing the users and creators combating hate online. It's like the word hate, you don't own the word hate. I gotta come back here. You don't own the word hate, all right? Like, hate isn't just the other people. It's you too.
Yeah.
You are hateful.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Like, hate exists in people. People have, like, hate comes up through people. Like, it expresses through individuals of all political stripes. It's not like hate is something that only exists elsewhere. Okay? So, when you say more effectively combat hate, right? What they're actually saying, right? This is, again, they're trying to steal the word hate. They're trying to steal words. They're trying to steal these words. Hate. Like it only exists on the right. Right? That's the only place that you find the hateful rhetoric. That's the only place where the hate exists. It's hate groups.
And then they use hate to combat the hate. So it's not really doing anything.
And then they say, okay, while avoiding silencing the users and creators who are combating hate, like, what does that mean? It only makes sense if you've already decided that the people on the other side are the hateful ones, right? You've got predefined categories of, they're kind of implicit. They're not explicit categories, right? But that's why you need experts, civil rights experts to define, where, because it's not explicit. It's not written down anywhere. There's no actual rules. It's just, the experts know, right, who the right people to silence are. This is terrible. Yeah. This is terrible. And we hope to use these policies to hold tech companies accountable, right? They're coming after you. With this yardstick, we hope to measure and report on which services and companies are best protecting their users, right? So they're setting up a cultural framework by which they can shame companies, and I'm sure they would agree with that. This is I doubt that there are people who would, argue that this is not what's happening. Like, if this is a straw man, I would be so surprised. Yeah. They're intentionally setting up a cultural framework by which they can shame companies into adopting their political
ideology.
Yeah, their political
narrative or
goals.
Yeah.
Right? They want their political goals to be adopted by corporations, right? And if you don't do it, we're going to shame you, and we're going to set up a measurement, right, by which we can point out to the world how far away from our political goals you are.
Yeah. And I mean, these people are not without power.
No,
even the Southern Poverty Law Center on their own.
You know what I mean? And like, this is why I think it's ridiculous when they, like these fringe extremists aren't powerful. It's like,
they've got vast resources, and there's like 40 groups that put this whole thing together.
Right. And here's the other thing: is that by and large, these really adamant activists, the people who are putting stuff like this together, they're not stupid, right? The white supremacists are generally stupid.
Yeah.
Right? So this is something that Brett Weinstein said on Joe Rogan at one point, right? And it was a good point, is that the coalition on the left is, naturally kind of disparate. There's, the black community isn't really that fond of the gay community, right? Because the black community is more conventionally Christian and conservative. like socially conservative on the whole, right? So they're not natural allies with the gay community. You know what I mean? But they get kind of like lumped together as, well, we're the left and we defend minorities. And so it's kind of like they put up with each other to like,
Yeah.
But so the way that Brett kind of talks about it is that on the right, ethno-nationalists, right, as things break down and people kind of regress a little bit into their tribal, identities, ethno-nationalists have a more solid foundation to drop back into, right? And they'll overpower all these fractious, groups that don't naturally ally together. So that makes them dangerous. And that's true, right? But the people, these postmodernists aren't stupid. It's a really like these people are extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
But they're way out contextualizing the right. Right, which is why we end up always going wherever they want. And that's the problem. Like they're smart. They know how to guide the culture. So it's not, it's a different kind of dangerous, for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's not that they're dangerous.
Yeah.
They're absolutely dangerous.
And you think, I don't know, do you think their intentions are good with this, or do you think their true intentions are to be like all powerful and to basically control the narrative and control like what goes on the internet? And well, I'm sure some of them, their intentions are good, and some of them.
So so that gets back into this question about like the. So okay, Peterson's talked about how he was in the Socialist Party when he was a kid, and he liked the kind of top level members of the party because he felt like they really had some genuine compassion.
Yeah.
But the low level activists, right, the people on the streets, they didn't have compassion. They just hated people who were successful.
Right.
Right. So there's this. I talked about this yesterday too. There's this split between the elite and the intellectual, the intelligentsia that's kind of like providing the framework to move forward within, and the people who are moving forward within that framework, right? So there's people who are coming up with these, grand ideas about, the way things actually work and how you move the levers of power and all this kind of stuff. And then they're speaking in platitudes that serve that bigger idea. And then people who are not very smart go, yeah, fuck the police, and then those people are moving within that framework. Okay. So you've got very intelligent people who are guiding the mob, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got a dangerous mob behind them.
Well, and some of those intelligent people have good intentions, and some of those intelligent people maybe have nefarious purpose,
right. Right. Well, and that's
just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you're compassionate,
right?
And
well, that's definitely true, right? So as for but that's an important distinction to make, right?
Yeah.
Because we got to decide whether we're talking about people who are marching in the streets who are, kind of just like they're convinced of some narrative, right? And they're going, women are oppressed, or this is a dangerous country for gay people to live in, or whatever, right? It's like, I don't know how you can be convinced of that narrative, but people are convinced of that narrative, right? Like, this is probably one of the safest countries in the world for gay people to live in.
Oh, yeah. Nowadays, I mean 20 years ago, it wasn't as safe.
It wasn't, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was a kid, right? Sure.
It was,
But, like, gay marriage is legal.
Yeah. We've come a long way in the last 20, 30 years.
And I'm not saying that, like, we don't have any more work to do culturally.
Yeah.
And even so there's definitely like legal issues surrounding transgenderism and stuff like that that we still have to sort out that are genuinely important, because we have equal rights under law for almost everyone, you know what I mean? But like there's certain categories that the law hasn't quite sorted out yet how to treat these people equally.
Right.
Okay, so we still have to have some conversations around this kind of stuff.
Because it's kind of such a new thing, really.
It's new. You know, we've got to work on it. I'm not saying, you know, we don't need to work on that, but like we live in one of the, you know, the most open and free societies in the world. And people here are treated better than anywhere else in the world. So I don't know how people are I mean, I kind of understand how people are convinced of the narrative that, you know, this country is oppressive and all this.
I mean, they're trying to create more rules and regulations and less freedom, really.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's the... So you asked, you know, are these people, you know, they have good intentions, whatever, and so we've got to. There's two things to make. The people is one distinction, right? Do these people have good intentions or bad intentions? Well, first of all, which people?
Yeah.
The good, you know, there's a couple different groups of people we're talking about here. There's the people who are, you know, framing the narrative and, you know, trying to pull people forward, you know, with them, and then there's the people who are going, oh yeah, that sounds like smart. That's good. Oh yeah. And going that way, right?
I guess.
So I'm not, and I don't mean to, you know, people need that. You know what I mean? This is the thing about hierarchy that's important. Like, we need people who are smart enough to frame a narrative and move us forward, right? And who have the time and the patience to think about things and do it. We need those people in the world, right? Because not everyone who's going, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea, go that way, right? People don't have the time, right? And not everyone has the desire even to like consider these things, right? Some people just want to feed their family, you know, and go about their day, right? And that's good, that's fine. I have nothing against those people for not. This is one of the other things that I hate about a lot of political conversations. People are, oh yeah, all these morons just following the narrative. You know, this kind of stuff. Well,
they gotta make a living.
And not everyone has the ability to, you know, dissect everything all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean? And not everyone has that inclination or that, you know, desire that...
and they may not have the intellectual capacity.
Right. And not everyone has the intellectual capacity for that. So it's like, that's not a problem as far as I'm concerned. That I think it's, you know, to people, like a lot, I've heard this a lot in libertarian circles because, you know, I've run a lot in libertarian circles. Like, you know, oh yeah, you're just a statist. You know, it's like, well, okay, look, yes, some people like are okay with the status quo and they don't want to like radically change it, and some people do, but I don't think that people are sheep, right? Or if to the extent that I think that analogy works, I don't think those people are bad for being sheep, right? Like we have a culture that works pretty well, and if you just kind of go, yeah, I'm just gonna like feed my family and stuff, like I don't hate you for that,
right?
You know what I mean? Like that's fine.
Or think you're somehow lesser or a bad person,
right? So I think that people who are just trying to, you know, feed their families and, you know, and you know, run a business or, you know, do their jobs, you know, make their house payments and, you know, do the things that they need to do. Maybe they're, you know, helpful in their community somehow. You know, maybe they're volunteer firemen or something like this, you know, whatever it is. These people aren't like, because they're not like grand political philosophers, it's not like they're, you know, bad people or something, right? So I'm not trying, you know, like, I don't want, like, but it's important to make that distinction between the people who are framing the narrative and the people who are going, yeah, it sounds like a pretty good idea, let's go that way.
Yeah.
Right? They're different people. The people who are saying, you know, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea, let's go that way, right? They're basically just following temperamental things, right? It's just like, okay, like...
They're going by their feeling of what sounds good to them.
Right. Or... And so... people vote according to their temperament, right? If you're conscientious and orderly, you probably vote, you know, kind of the conservative sounding positions, right? Sound good to you, and you know, whatever level of analysis you hear them at, whatever, you know, level of resolution, it's like whether it's build that wall or, you know, or well, you know, borders are necessary because, you know, without borders we don't have differentiation, and you know, theoretical levels. Right? it's going to sound more reasonable to them because of their temperament. So they can just go about their day-to-day life and go build that wall, or they can, follow it all the way down. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to crap on them for not taking the same amount of time to think about these things as other people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or as I do, or as, as political pundits do, right? Like that's...
Yeah, most people don't have time for that, you
right.
know?
And so if you think you're not following some narrative, you're silly. You know what I mean? Like most people are following a narrative.
Yeah.
They're living within some narrative framework. Okay, that's a leftist. That's a postmodernist idea. Is that basically that we live within narrative frameworks. I know this is getting boring.
No, excuse me.
So on that level, on the functionary level, people who are just going, oh yeah, here's a good, right? Some people are good people and some people are bad people, right? Some people think that sounds like a good idea because they're compassionate, right? And some people think that sounds like a good idea because fuck the rich people. Like that's true.
Yeah.
At all these different levels, right?
Yeah.
So you get to the top, and it's really hard to distinguish between. It's really hard to distinguish between people making arguments in good faith and people who are making,
power plays.
Power plays.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can postmodernism is a mental technology, right? Just like any other technology in the world, any human being can go, pick it up and use it, right? So when you hear people talking about, oh, well, we need the toolkits to unpack that. They literally are talking about intellectual technology that you can utilize to take apart an idea, right? So you can use those intellectual toolkits, right? Because you hate people who are successful and you resent the fact that you're so intelligent and other stupid people are making more money than you and have a better life, and people like them because they're normal, right? And you can be resentful about that and be like, screw all you stupid people who are just like following the herd and you sheep and whatever like this. And you can make very calm, rational, cogent arguments from using one of these intellectual toolkits to tear that person's whole life apart and make them a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You can do that. And you can kind of see it in their eyes and hear it in their voice. They're like, yeah, I want to get you. You're like, I want to tear you apart because you're this horrible thing, you white cisgendered male, whatever, right?
Yeah, it's kind of.
So they want to tear your identity into shreds because they hate everything that that they think you stand for. Right. Because for some reason they're not happy with themselves. Basically, I think that's basically what it boils down to. They're not happy with themselves, and they think that if they can like tear you apart, then somehow that makes them whole.
It builds their ego up a little bit.
Like, you're more fractious than I am. Fuck you. Something like this. You just don't even know how like ridiculously whatever you are. So like, and then it makes them feel better about themselves. There are people who use it that way. There are also people who can use those toolkits and make good faith arguments and act in actual benevolence, and trying to move us in good directions. Yeah. And it's really difficult to tell those things apart, unless you're like one-on-one with the person. You kind of you have to have that like biological, cultural kind of awareness that you can see it in the other person. You go, oh, ooh, you're not, whatever.
Yeah. Should we go more through this, or we should take the dog out soon? But no, yes. I got us off topic.
Yeah, no.
Sort of.
So here we go. Enforcement, right of appeal, transparency, evaluation and training, governance and authority, state actors, bots and trolls. Okay, enforcement. The company will use the best available tools with appropriately trained and resourced staff, technological monitoring, and civil rights expertise. Again, right? Civil rights expertise. They don't want you to. They don't want these companies treating people evenly. They don't want these people treating people equally. They want civil rights experts. Read that. This right here. The company will use the best available tools with appropriately trained and resourced staff, technological monitoring, and civil rights expertise to enforce the rules in a comprehensive and non-arbitrary manner. Yeah, non-arbitrary. Right. What they're actually saying when they say civil rights expertise, read that as ideologically indoctrinated. All right? That's that civil rights expertise is, I mean, what they're this whole little enforcement thing is basically a way of saying we're not going to enforce this equally.
Yeah.
Right? Comprehensive and non-arbitrary. Well, non-arbitrary doesn't mean fairly.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, if I say, well, I'm going to kill all the white people, that doesn't mean I'm, being non-arbitrary, right? Like, I'm being non-arbitrary about who I'm targeting, right? So, non-arbitrary is not the same thing as fair. It's not the same thing as equal. It's not the same thing as evenly, right? It's not the same thing as equality before the law, right? It means non-arbitrary means just that they've got a framework within which they're going to judge you, okay? So when they say civil rights expertise, they mean ideologically indoctrinated, and when they say non-arbitrary, they mean we're going to target people that we want to target, right, and allow the things that we want to allow. That's what they mean by non-arbitrary. Doesn't mean you get the freedom to act within the rules that will be fairly applied to everyone. Right of appeal. The company will provide notice and a fair right of appeal to someone if their content is taken down. This is particularly important for creators of color. All right. Why is it particularly important for creators of color?
Yeah, what does that even mean? Why?
Like, it's so bizarre that needs to get tacked on to the end there, right? It's like the right of appeal. A company will provide notice and a fair right of appeal to someone if their content is taken down. It's like, sounds like a perfectly viable statement on its own.
Right. Did they add the last part because they feel like people of color have, like, been oppressed and that, like, because of their, I don't get it.
It's because they're obsessed with race.
Yeah.
It's because they're obsessed with race. The company will regularly provide robust transparency reports and data so that outside groups, read that, us, and researchers can effectively monitor the company's progress, study trends, and recommend improvements. Right? It's like, basically what they want is an API or like a cultural API to control your company. Right? If you're a technology company and you're going to adopt these terms of service, you're saying, oh yeah, sure, plug your ideology in. My company is going to follow your ideology from now on. We're going to be a political organization, that follows your political ideology, and we're going to report to you. This is like, we're going to report robust transparency reports and data so that outside groups and research can effectively monitor the company's progress. You really want that? You want if you're a technology company and you want a political organization
to police
to effectively monitor your progress, you're nuts. That's just stupid. Oh. Evaluation and training. The company will invest. This is how you are as a company. You're going to invest in our political ideology. You will invest in staff and training practices to ensure that you're providing sufficient resources to address the problem.
What?
Whatever the problem is, the problem.
And regularly audit its practices.
So basically, they
want the company to pay for people.
Yeah.
To monitor
to dissect the company politically.
Oh my god.
They want you. They want.
Can you imagine how many people they would need? I mean, they already have staffs that probably kind of take a look at everything as much as possible. But I mean, how many people would you need to have on staff to look through all the tweets and all the videos and make sure there's nothing that's not benign?
This whole evaluation and training. This isn't about evaluation and training. This is about administration. They're trying to get your whatever company wants to adopt these policies. This is agreeing to insert a layer of bureaucratic control that is purely ideologically driven. Right? We want administrators in your company, right, who will make sure that you're adhering to our political ideology. That's what this is about. Training practices to ensure that it's providing sufficient resources to address the problem and regularly audit its practices. They want people in your company auditing your political correctness on a regular basis. They want you to pay for that to happen. They want you to pay political activists to deconstruct your company. This is what they're asking you to do. They want you to pay political activists to deconstruct the political correctness of your company. I mean, if that's okay with you, you deserve whatever's coming. That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. Yeah. If you're aware of that and you go through with it, you're naive beyond comprehension. Governance and authority. The company will make a clear commitment to the importance of this issue. Which issue is not, ever expressed. It's like this, again, hate. Just this little tiny word, hate. That's it. Just hate. Right? That issue. That contains everything we want to destroy, hate,
Yeah.
This issue. I can't believe that they're, commitment to the importance of this issue by designating a senior executive, appoint a board of directors committee, and engage a committee of external advisors, all dedicated to addressing hate and discrimination on the platform. It's a terrible idea to insert this kind of political bureaucracy into your company. Please don't do this. I mean, just for the sake of our economy, please don't do this. State actors, bots, and trolls. Recognizing that social media in particular is a new front for information warfare, the company will take affirmative steps to identify, prohibit, and disrupt those who try to conduct coordinated hateful campaigns on the service. Coordinated hateful campaigns. How about, you want to say, look, you can't have fake accounts, you can't have 1 million fake accounts. Mm-hmm. There's an argument for that too, for and against that. But, this idea that people aren't allowed to coordinate, because ignore that word hateful, please. When you read this stuff, just ignore the word hateful, because hateful doesn't mean anything. Hateful doesn't mean anything. It means whatever somebody who has the power to limit your speech wants it to mean. Mm-hmm. That's all hateful means. It means anything that somebody who has the power to silence you wants it to mean. Hateful doesn't mean anything. So when you read when you disrupt those who try to conduct coordinated campaigns on the service, ignore that little emotional word, okay? Because it's an emotional word, so it can have any content you want to put in there. Yeah. Coordinated campaigns. People shouldn't be able to have coordinated campaigns on the internet? Because that's what we're looking at, right? Yeah. When they throw the word hateful in there, it's like, oh, no, not your coordinated campaigns. No. Of course not. Of course we're not trying to disrupt your coordinated campaigns. Yeah. Just the hateful ones. Just the hateful ones.
Who's deciding what is a hateful campaign?
Oh, well, don't worry about that. We'll make sure that that's, totally fair. Mm-hmm. We'll just make sure that that's totally fair. You don't have to worry about that part. We just want to, stop the bad people. Not you. Just the bad people. We just want to stop the bad people. The hateful ones.
Yeah.
All right. So when you see those kinds of emotional words thrown in there, coordinated hateful campaigns, it's like, well, okay, what if you are coordinating a campaign against President Trump? Right? Is that a coordinated hateful campaign, it depends on who's in power, doesn't it? It depends on who's in power.
Right.
And that's the problem with these kinds of rules. All right? You can't have rules that depend on who's in power, because who's in power will change, right? And if who's in power will change, then the least admirable types of people will eventually end up in power, because those are the types of people who seek the power, and then they will use them to commit genocide. They will use these kinds of rules to commit horrible atrocities against the population, right? We can't allow this kind of stuff to go forward. When you see coordinated campaigns with the word hateful snuck in the middle in there, right? They're playing with your emotions to get you to agree to your own subjugation. What is hateful activity?
As defined in the model terms of service, hateful activity means activities that incite or engage in violence, intimidation, harassment, threats, or defamation targeting an individual or group based on their actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, ethnicity, immigration status, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, or disability.
And then they go on to call that a strict definition of hateful activity. Okay, activities that incite or engage in violence. I agree with that. That's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Intimidation. I don't think you should intimidate people. However, okay. Yeah. However, what determines whether or not someone's being intimidated?
Yeah.
Right? Because I can just tell you that, I'm not intimidated by some, Twitter mob, right? But maybe I tell you I am intimidated by a Twitter mob.
Right.
So
does it go by what someone feels about something? Like if someone feels that they've been harassed or intimidated, does that count? Or does it have to be a more intense definition? I'm sorry, but lots of people say they're offended.
Right.
But that's kind of your responsibility. Like you could decide not to be offended by something.
So okay, here's the thing, because this is another thing where the online space and the real world space are totally different from each other. Okay? If you say something to someone like in the grocery store or whatever, right? And they disagree with you and they start following you around the grocery store and walking down the street next to you, making their case against what you said, right? And they're arguing with you, and you're just trying to walk away from them. Right?
That's harassment.
That's harassment, and especially in the case of someone who's having an angry political discussion, you could definitely call that intimidation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if somebody was, if somebody was following you around a grocery store, somebody my size was following you around a grocery store, telling you you're wrong and arguing with you about, trying to get you to admit something politically, I'd call that intimidating.
Right.
I would definitely see that as intimidating.
But it's way different on the internet.
Right. If somebody is tweeting at you constantly or replying to your stuff on Facebook, that's not intimidation.
Yeah.
Right? But you could say you're intimidated by it, and you can make that analogy. If someone's following me around in a grocery store, I'd be intimidated by it.
Right.
Right? So, whether or not something is intimidation online is highly subjective.
Yeah.
And we haven't had any real discourse about how to sort that out yet.
Exactly.
We're just kind of going, oh, I was intimidated. This person's intimidated. The Kathy Newman thing, Jordan Peter, we had to call in security, we had to call the police and get security experts. Why?
Yeah.
I'd call the police right now, tell them I don't feel safe, and I need someone to come down here and advise me on my security. They'll come over.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that there's an actual.
It doesn't mean there's an actual reason for it. It doesn't mean that actually constitutes intimidation.
Right.
Right, or that there's any credible threats. So when you people who are inciting or engaging in violence, there you go. Because violence has a definition. As long as we can maintain the definition of violence, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Right? When you start talking about intimidation, it's okay.
That's a little more.
We're getting a little more subjective.
Yeah.
Harassment. What's harassment online? I mean, if you're having a political discussion with the whole world because everyone on Twitter can see your tweets, So you're having a political discussion by tweeting something to hundreds of millions, maybe billions of people, right? And like somebody decides to argue with you.
Right. Is that harassment? If they continue to argue with you, is that harassment?
Right.
You know, if they call you a loser or an idiot or say that you're wrong or, you know, like what constitutes harassment online?
Right.
You know, it's a completely different thing than in person.
Yeah. Now, and they say harassment, threats. Again, threats. Okay.
Threats, yes.
Threats I agree with for
threats,
sure.
Yes.
Right? If you're because that's the same thing as inciting or inciting violence.
Right.
You're not inciting someone else to violence. You're saying that you're going to do it yourself.
Right.
That's
yeah.
Right
that's
there.
Illegal.
That's
illegal. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Or defamation. Now defamation. My God. What's defamation? Somebody like, okay, you called me a Nazi.
Yeah. Is that?
You said I was a white supremacist.
Yeah.
That's defamation, right? Well, guess what? No, because it only matters if it's based on their actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, ethnicity, immigration status, gender identity, or gender identity, sexual orientation, or disability. Okay. Now let's further contextualize that because if you're white, it doesn't count. And if you're male, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
And if your sexual orientation is straight, it doesn't count.
Right.
Right? If your gender is cisgendered, male, white, heterosexual, then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they can defame you all they want.
None of that counts. Those aren't protected.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, we should go back to the...
Yeah. So, thank you. So, to call that a strict definition of hateful activity is delusional, right? Because harassment isn't, you know, to call something harassment is completely subjective. You know, whether or not something qualifies as defamation is deeply subjective.
Yeah.
You know, we just don't have the categories for what these infractions are online.
Online, exactly.
We just don't have it, right? There's no legal, like we just don't have the legal precedence yet.
Right.
You know, like people need to be sued over, you know, like, oh, well, this person was, you know, harassing me online. You know what I mean? And we need to get like a clear legal set of legal precedents and have great legal minds really work through these issues and
it's going to take years.
Yeah, it's going to take years,
or decades.
It's going to take a long time to work through this stuff, but we don't have it yet. And so to ask these corporations that specialize in things like processing payments or providing people with domain names or hosting websites to suddenly become legal experts and decide what harassment means.
Or pay for legal teams. You know what I mean? Like, why should they need to do that?
No, they
Why
shouldn't.
should they have to pay legal teams to come in and, like, sort through all this stuff? And
you're right. They shouldn't. So anyway, that's not a strict definition of hateful activity by any means. Like, there's nothing strict about that definition. The only thing strict about that definition, I'm sure, is that it won't be applied evenly to, you know, straight white males, basically, or, you know, and increasingly, you know, straight white women and straight people in general, right? What was it? Somebody said something about like straight black men are the white men of black people or something like this.
What?
And it's like,
oh my God,
Jesus! Like you hear these kinds of intersectional arguments, and you're like, okay, obviously nothing is ever going to be applied fairly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People aren't being treated as individuals by these policies. You know what I mean? These are the kinds of ideas behind these policies. There's no way we're going to be treated, you know, fairly as an individual. You're going to be treated based on the color of your skin.
Right.
You know, you're going to be treated based on what's in between your legs, based on who you have sex with. You're not going to be treated, you know, like on what you actually are. You're going to be treated based on your immutable characteristics.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
So they're saying it's not going to block free speech.
Right. These policies will, so they're not going to block free speech. Now, first of all, as an initial matter, the First Amendment does not apply to the policies of a private company.
Which is true.
It's true, but it's kind of beside the point.
Yeah.
Right? The reason the First Amendment is enshrined in the Constitution, it was the first thing that we said needed to be reserved for individuals, is because it's a principle. All right? It's in the Constitution to protect it.
Yeah.
It's in the Constitution to protect the principle. It's not in there because, like, oh, well, we're just going to kind of randomly decide that this is something that, the government shouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
Maybe just, no. It's a principle. It's a foundational principle for what makes our society work. Right? And the principle is not that the government isn't allowed to say it. It's that human being individuals are allowed to say things.
Yeah.
That's the principle. That's the principle that makes things work. Right? The restriction of the suppression by the government is only, really necessary because the government has a monopoly on violence. So if the government's got a monopoly on violence and they can make you, not say things, that's a real serious problem.
Yeah.
So they enshrined that in the Constitution. But it doesn't mean that it's okay to stop people from saying things.
Right.
Right? The principle, right, is that free people discuss things and come up with solutions together. They do better when they're allowed to talk.
Yeah.
Right? We are, as individuals, allowed to express ourselves, and we have to be because it makes a better society.
Yeah.
Right? That's the principle that's enshrined in our Constitution and that the government's protected from. But that doesn't mean that just like, oh, well, since it's not the government, it's okay. Right? Right? Like, here's a non-government example of how it's not okay to suppress free speech. Right? If somebody comes up to me and says, I believe that, that we should reinstitute slavery, and I punch them in the face, right? I can go to jail for that.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not okay for me to hit them.
Right.
Because they said things that I didn't like.
Right. Yeah.
Right? If somebody comes up to me and says, I think that we should have socialism, I punch them in the face, I can go to jail for that because it's not okay for me to suppress other people's speech, even though I'm not the government.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have any right to do that. This person said some things, some words, the noises came out of their mouth, and I, tried to stop them from doing that with physical violence. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever because and the reason for that is because the principle of free speech is, well, first of all, physical violence is more fundamentally wrong. The right to physical integrity is more fundamental than the right to speech. Right? So in that situation, I violated a more fundamental right by stopping someone, by using violence to stop someone from speaking.
Yeah.
Which is why I can use violence to stop someone from committing violence against me, because it's the same level.
Right.
Right? So, but in this situation, we're talking about the hierarchy of rights. If you're stopping me from being able to process payments, you're stopping me from being able to, engage in commerce, right? That's a more fundamental right than the right to speech. I should be able to buy food. I should be able to engage in commerce, right? The free exchange of property is more fundamental than the free exchange of ideas.
I thought you were saying that the First Amendment is more fundamental.
No. So life is more fundamental than choice is more fundamental, right? So we've got like, if you don't have life, right? You can't. If you don't have life, you can't express your ideas, basically, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody is threatening your physical being with violence, physical violence, you have the right to defend yourself with physical violence. But if somebody's saying words to you, those don't inflict physical violence on you, so you don't have a right to inflict physical violence on them, because the physical integrity of your body and your being is fundamental to your ability to speak. Right? Your ability to speak is a more subtle right that comes from the integrity of your body. So if you can't feed yourself, if you don't have the right to buy things and engage in commerce, right? Then you can't. It's not as stark of a difference, obviously, as the difference between, bodily integrity and physical violence in speech, but it's still there. It's like if you can't engage in commerce and free trade and like engage with other people as you see fit, right? That's more fundamental than free speech.
And that's where most people, I mean, that's where plenty of people are making their money, is online through these payment processors who, there's not that many of them. They kind of, you know what I mean? Like, there's just a few of them, so they do have a pretty good monopoly on, you know, the payment processing.
Yes.
So these... And just, you know, like, we're almost out of time.
Yes. All right. Yeah, it's been going quite a while here. We're almost at 2 hours. So they say even if it did apply, so they're trying to, you know, they're like, oh, the First Amendment, you know, only applies to the government. It's okay if we silence your speech. No, it's not. It's completely unprincipled. It's a terrible idea to try and silence people. Okay, you should have better arguments than them. You shouldn't try to, you know, shut them up. You should try to convince more people.
Yeah.
It only applies to actions taken by a U.S. state or a local government. Okay, yes, true, but it's not. But that's only the legal thing, all right? The legal thing is there. It's there to enshrine the principle. The principle is, you know, the principle is fundamental to the enshrinement in law. All right. But even if it did apply, the First Amendment does not protect all speech. We carefully wrote the definition of hateful activity to cover types of speech that courts have said are not protected as free speech: incitement, violence, intimidation, harassment, threats, and defamation. They have scoured the literature to find these cases, I promise you. But yes, okay. Incitement to violence. Right? Intimidation, harassment, threats for sure, defamation. Okay. Fine. Yes, these things are illegal. The Supreme, they're trying their hardest not to say hate speech. They want to say it so bad, right? The Supreme Court has already decided that hate speech is not a category in the United States. It's not a legal category of speech. It doesn't exist, right? And it's because, thankfully, we've got people who, you know, in charge of our, you know, at the highest levels of our judiciary, who are smart enough to understand that hate is just some sort of like box that you can put anything you want. It's a subjective feeling box that you can put anything you want to in to suppress people that you disagree with politically. It's a Orwellian. Yeah. Okay, we also looked to hate crimes laws, which should never have been allowed as a thing either, to determine what types of characteristics to protect. It's wrong to discriminate against someone based on their immutable characteristics, those personal traits that one cannot change or that are fundamental to one's identity. First of all, fundamental to an identity is a... I'll leave that alone for now. Such as race, color, religion. Now,
that one's not immutable.
Religion is not immutable. Right? People become atheists. Atheists become born again. You know, like, people change religions all the time.
Yeah.
So whether, you know, these are not immutable characteristics necessarily. Gender, that's not an immutable characteristic anymore, is it?
Well, not according to some.
So, you know, gender identity certainly isn't an immutable characteristic according to the people who are putting this forth. Sexual orientation or disability. All right. There are several legal obstacles which serve important purposes that prevent government action from unilaterally solving this problem, even if we wanted it to. Moreover, the tech companies who built these highly profitable platforms also created these problems as collateral damage. Now, first of all, the tech companies didn't create these problems. Right. Racism isn't something that the tech companies created, okay? The ability for racist people to find each other and talk to each other isn't something that these platforms created. It's just not. Like, people have had these abilities the whole time. Okay? They're more able to do it just like you're more able to do it with any other ideology. Okay? You take, you know, progressives can get together online easier now too. It's not, you know, libertarians can get together online easier. Like, people who play chess can get together online more easily now. It's not... You know?
These platforms bring people together. You can find other people with similar likes and dislikes.
Yeah,
and,
whatever,
you know,
they might be.
And some of them might be...
And so the fact that some of those things might be abhorrent, right, yes, there's, you know, I mean, like, I don't want ISIS getting together online,
right,
you know,
right,
like, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
But I also don't. I don't think it's Facebook's responsibility to stop ISIS from communicating.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Now, if there's credible threats, like if they actually see like that there's credible threats or something, then, you know,
they should be reporting it to law
right,
enforcement.
they should be reporting it, you know, but just like allowing people to connect, that's what the platform is for.
Yeah.
You know, but if there's threats or if there's actual threats of violence, then yes, report it to law enforcement,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But like, so the sentence that says those who profit from these systems should bear the burden of solving the problem. And I just don't really agree, you know?
Yeah, well, you have to first agree to what the problem is. And they just kind of like say, the problem. Well, what's the problem? It's hate.
Yeah.
The problem is hate. And these profitable companies should bear the burden of solving the problem of hate.
Like that's a thing that could actually be solved. There's always going to be people who hate.
Right.
You know?
Right. So no, they shouldn't, you know, you have to kind of first agree that the problem is solvable, right? And that, you know, and then agree on a definition for this problem, which we don't, right? You say, okay, are there violent organizations who are able to communicate more easily because of online technology?
Yes.
Yes. Is that a problem? Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. But they're not going after just the groups that are actually violent
No.
and being, you know, and like terrorists. They're not, in fact, like, to me, it seems like the far left or like postmodernists are, you know, not against extremist Muslims. You know what I mean? They're actually, they try to protect that. And that's a whole nother conversation.
You know, there's the, you know, you're not allowed to, this is how these policies are enforced non-arbitrarily.
Right.
Right? It's like, this person is, well, religion is an immutable characteristic suddenly. Right? Why is religion an immutable characteristic?
Yeah.
I wonder.
I mean,
maybe it's because you've already bludgeoned the Christians into like secular submission, which, okay, great. Fine. All right? I'm happy about that.
Separation of church and state.
I'm totally happy about that. But like, that doesn't mean we should stop with the Christians.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're the only ones who should get bludgeoned into secular
we shouldn't
submission.
be bashing them, but I mean, they're also not the ones committing violence in the name of their God. At least not anymore.
No, certainly not in this country. You know what I mean? Like it's.
That's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole.
We really need to
go.
move through this or call it good for now.
The First Amendment protects free speech in the United States, including hate speech. Good, including hate speech. Well, first of all, it doesn't include hate speech, right? Like, hate speech doesn't exist in the United States. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like, oh yeah, hate speech is protected, right? Like, no. Hate speech isn't real. Okay? And I know there are people who say, oh yeah, of course we know that there's, you know, like Peterson says this all the time. Oh, you know, of course there's, you know, there's
hateful speech.
Right? And there's not hate speech. Hate speech is a weird, like, construction. There's hateful speech. Right?
Yeah.
It's like saying there's joy speech. Right? Like, why is that an odd construction?
Yeah.
Right? Because and this is interesting linguistically. Like, why don't we say, oh, you know, I had a joy talk with someone? Because you had a joyful talk with someone.
Right.
Like, you're speaking with them in a way that was full of joy. Right? Now, the problem is when you say hate speech, right? You're taking away the you're stripping it of the you're stripping it of the hateful speech. You take that full off of it, right? And because when you say hateful speech, right, the fullness, right, it's filled by the individual, right? The fullness in hateful speech comes from the intent of the individual.
Yeah.
right? Because the individual filled it with a certain kind of emotion, right? That right? Hateful speech, speech that was full of hatred,
Right.
When you get rid of the fullness and it's just hate speech, then it's not about the individual intent. It's not about what the individual put into it, right? It's about how we define hate. It's what we categorize as hate. It's not about the individual putting fullness, filling speech with a certain kind of emotion anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why they use the hate speech instead of hateful speech. Hate speech isn't a thing. It's a weird kind of Orwellian construction of the English language.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we really got to go. We've been 2 hours now. We're a little over 2 hours. Maybe we'll pick back up on this tomorrow. We'll go through some more of this. Hopefully, some of you may have enjoyed it. Again, you can pick us up on Facebook or Twitter at Just Us Chatting. Subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. Like this video if you enjoyed it. We got to walk the dog.
And then work.
And then get some work done.
Thanks
all right.
for
Peace and
joining
love
us.
to everyone. We love you. Take care. Take care of each other out there. And have a good day.